When I was making my last video of cards that were exploding in price, I came across an uncommon that was standard legal that had gotten above $5. And I thought to myself, I have been seeing that happen more and more. So I went and looked and I found 5 uncommons that are standard legal right now that are all $5 or more. I want to go through each of these 5 cards that I found, one that was very surprising to me to even be standard legal, and talk about the price history and what decks they're getting played in right now, and if it's a good time to let these go or not. The way I look at it is if you've got 3 or 4 of these sitting around, that's like a draft, right? You could go up and do a draft on Friday night. Are drafts still $15? Am I now the MTG boomer? Joel R Magic is brought to you by Card Conduit, the best place to sell your cards quickly and easily on the internet. TCG Player, the best place to buy them. Dragon Shield, the best way to protect them. And Moxfield, the only place to put your deck lists on the internet. And hey, if you're going to MagicCon Vegas, I want to see you there. I'm going to have a meet and greet Saturday afternoon. Watch my socials for the specific time as we get closer to the event. That's at the end of September. I'll be there all 3 days. You can catch me in Creator Central. Let's get a Commander game if I'm around. Saturday afternoon is going to be my meet and greet, so I hope that you'll come and stand in that line and go back through it a couple of times with a mustache and then a hat so that it looks like I've got a long line of people to see me. Thanks. Let's start with Into the Floodmore from Bloomburrow. This card is very interesting to me. It's a 1-mana instant that says return target creature an opponent controls to its owner's hand. That is a very common card. Unsummon has been around as long as I can remember in Magic the Gathering, and that's essentially what that does. This goes a step further, though, and allows you to provide the opponent a tapped 1/1 blue fish token, and if you do that, you can instead return a non-land permanent an opponent controls to its owner's hand. Typically, that type of effect costs 2 in Magic, just as like a base design level. Typically, to return any creature, it's 1 mana. To return any non-land permanent to their hand, it's just 2 mana. So at 1 mana instant speed, this card has gotten a lot of playability, more I think than people originally anticipated it to get. This one started as like a $1 to $2 uncommon and then dropped down to bulk where you would expect it through August into September. But then about Duskmourn, it started to rise and it spiked for the first time up to $4. Around Etherdrift, it dropped back down to the $1 to $2 range. At Tarkir, though, right after Tarkir released, boom, it jumped up into that $6 range, and it's been bouncing between $4 and $6 ever since then. Foils of this have started climbing up into the $8 to $10 range, and so if you opened a lot of collector boosters of Bloomburrow, check and see if you've got some foil Into the Floodmore sitting around. Let those go. Into the Floodmore is playing a huge role in the Delirium standard deck that's bouncing around. It's red and blue. There's a couple of other builds of it, but the main one is red and blue. It runs Agatha's Soul Cauldron and VV, of course, alongside cards like Marauding Mako that take advantage of cards being discard, Fear of Missing Out, and Steam Core Scholar and Tersa Light Shatter that all let you discard cards. And then you're running a pack of sorceries and instants that either let you draw cards or interact with the board, 4 of which there's a 4 of Into the Floodmore in most of the builds of this deck. It's the versatility it provides. 1 mana to return 1 creature is already a good rate, but being able to return any permanent, especially in a world where prowess is such a fierce opponent in many metas right now, being able to at instant speed interact with any piece of anything on the board if need be in a pinch could be very strong. There's a modern deck that is actually adopted Into the Floodmore as well. I'm seeing it pop up as 1 or 2 ofs in sideboards. The Grixis control deck with Psychic Frog and Abhorrent Oculus, having that in the sideboard against those prowess threats makes sense. And the craziest thing about this card is it's not just constructed that we're seeing play with it. You look at a card like this and it's fairly innocuous, but it's seeing play in CEDH way more than you would expect. Obviously, VV decks, they are running it wholeheartedly. Over 20% of all VV decks online, over 16,000 decks are running this card. 50% of Crom and Tymna decks that have deck lists online have Into the Floodmore in the deck lists, and it goes from there. Clement decks, Glarb, Miss Bumbleflower, Kinnan, Hashaton even, Stella Lee. Lots of strong players love the versatility and don't care about the downside of a tapped fish. This is one, and you'll hear me say this a lot throughout today's video, I would release these. These are cards that, for me, with the exception of the last one, which is kind of a weird little outlier that I wanted to include. Any common or uncommon, if I have it and it gets up into that $5 to $10 range, especially if it's a new one, I want to release that ASAP. Like the flip lands, the spell on one side and the land on the other from MH3. Those are uncommons, I would say. It's less likely that we see those reprinted. I doubt that those would just pop up in a precon or even a secret layer, but I could see Into the Floodmore or our next card, Sheltered by Ghosts, popping up in any relevant pre-constructed commander deck in particular. I think that's where the reprintability of this is highest and threatens the prices of these the most if you happen to be holding on to them, and you can flip a few and make 5, 10, 15 bucks toward a draft or a single that you actually want. Sheltered by Ghosts had a very similar lifespan as Into the Floodmaw. Around Foundations, it was a $1 to $2 card coming up from bulk in Duskmourn, but by the time that we were in between Foundations and Etherdrift, this card spiked up to nearly $7. It was getting played in quite a few decks. Now it has fallen down around Tarkir to 2, but slowly risen back up and is now nearing that $5 mark again. Sheltered by Ghosts plays a lot of roles, and I think that's why we're seeing it hit in so many different places. It's 1 white, 1 other for an enchantment aura that enchants a creature you control. When it enters, you exile target non-land permanent an opponent controls until this leaves the battlefield. This already is an Oblivion Ring for 1 less mana. You just have to have a creature to enchant. And it's a little more delicate because it's going to be on a creature and not just be a straight up enchantment that's sitting on the battlefield. They can remove the creature and the enchantment goes to the graveyard as well, and they get their thing back. But we're getting 1 better mana off Oblivion Ring for the rate of removing a target non-land permanent from the battlefield. And on top of that, because it knows, the card knows it's a more fragile version of this ability, it gives the creature Ward 2 plus +1/+0 and lifelink to boot. They just kept putting words on this card. It's an uncommon, people. It's crazy. This card's also featured in the standard Delirium deck, but obviously it's featured in the one that splashes white. The standard Delirium deck that splashes white splashes it specifically for Helping Hand as a 4/of to return creature cards with mana value 3 or less from the graveyard to the battlefield, Guardian of New Benalia, Skrelv Defector Might for a little bit of protection and get through ability, and 4 Sheltered by Ghosts, not only as a power grower and a protector with that ward, but a lifelink provider and a piece of removal all in one. Then in Pioneer, there's a blue-white Spirits deck. Nobody's playing Pioneer. That format's not affecting any prices. Anyway, it is getting run in Pioneer decks. There's a blue-white Spirit deck that runs Spell Queller and Supreme Phantom and all the normal players that you would expect to see. And it's running 3 Sheltered by Ghosts, just as removal and buff and lifelink all in one. It's a lot of flying creatures in that deck, so you're able to get through, and even 1 more power could be good across a couple of different attacks. Yet again, however, this is not just a card that is confined to 60 card constructed. It's making waves in Commander as well. Lightpaws, Emperor's Voice, 50% of the Lightpaws decks that could run this, run this. It's a tutorable removal that fits into all of the other plans. Ariat of the Charmed Apple, same thing. It's an aura. Aura enchantments, those are so easy to tutor up. There are so many aura enchantment tutors compared to tutors for any other specific type of card. So Ariat of the Charmed Apple and Lightpaw's Emperor's Voice running these. Arna, Kinnerud, Sky Captain. More than 30% of each of these individual deck lists for these 3 commanders, run this card specifically. The next step down, Sithis, Harvest's Hand, Elevator of the Wild Court, decks that are going to want the most supreme auras and are going to be the most picky because they are running the absolute strongest ones, period. Still 20% of the Sithis and Elevator decks are running Sheltered by Ghosts. I just want to make the point that this card is making waves pretty much anywhere it can be played, where its strength is relative, but the strength is getting up there and also being commander playable. I remember seeing Untimely Malfunction for the first time and calling it one of my favorite cards in Duskmourn House of Horror. From an early point with this card, I was like, oh, that's got a lot of words on it. And we haven't seen it again since then. Obviously, it was just in Duskmourn. That set's still in print for sure. It was around $1 when the set debuted. Around Foundations, it had slowly crept up to $2. It tried to get up into 4s, but bounced off 3 around Etherdrift. But then after Tarkir Dragonstorm, it was just all the way up. Now we're up into the 5s, and I would assume that this one's going to go higher because look, this one is not seeing play in a single standard deck. No standard decks, no modern decks, obviously no pioneer decks. There aren't even any of those anymore. Nowhere is Untimely Malfunction getting run other than Commander. If I take it over to MTG Goldfish just to double check, there's a Ruby Storm Modern list that's listed, but it doesn't even have an Untimely in there. And there's a Painter deck in Legacy where it's like a one of in the sideboard. Past that, this is a completely Commander driven price. That's crazy to me. An uncommon from a standard set being driven up into the 5s simply because of Commander demand. Untimely Malfunction can do a lot, and I think it's the versatility that's drawing builders to it. You can destroy an artifact at instant speed, you can change the target of a spell or ability with a single target, or you can make it so that 1 or 2 target creatures just can't block this turn. All 3 modes of this at any given time of a Commander game have a ton of playability. It's not one of those cards where you look at one of the modes and you're like, well, never going to choose that one. But the other 2, one is the one I'm always going to choose. And then there's one that's like a maybe sometimes. All 3 of these at any given point are relevant. And I think that's why it's seeing play. However, just like I said, I think that this one's super easy to reprint in any pre-con they want to, any of these uncommons. I think that they can just pop up in a pre-con or they can pop up in a secret layer. That's not going to move the price of them a ton. And obviously, if they did pop up in a secret layer, I would say let's target them. The special Untimely Malfunction, yeah, let's target that and get a couple copies of it. But I think they could pop up in precons, and that's what will kill the price. Looking at commanders that this is mostly getting run in, 30% of Valgavoth decks are running it. That was around Duskmourn, so that makes sense. 40% of Magda Brazen Outlaw decks are running this. 40% of Kuja, Genome Sorcerer, Black Wizard Creature token, pinging damage decks are running this. 30% of Deadpool decks, and then you're into the 20% with Arabella Abandoned Doll. The playability of this card is off the charts, and it's very quickly turning into a commander staple in red for me. And it's one of 2 of these 5 that I actually think could go higher because it was just printed at the end of last year. And so it popping up in a pre-con, probably not until next year at the earliest. And so the desirability versus the reprintability of this one may be at a perfect place where this one could get up into that like $10 range. Maybe. It completely depends on supply and how much of it gets soaked up, but this one and the next one I think do have higher ceilings. Stock Up from Etherdrift is a pretty crazy card. This one has just had the wildest ride. It was 30 cents through February. At the end of February, it jumped up to like the $4 or $5 mark. By April, it was crossing that, and by May, it was $11. It dipped during the summer, crested back up toward 12 or 13, and has fallen recently here in the last couple weeks down into the $10 range. It is a strong card. I guess reading the card doesn't always explain the card as far as strength goes. A blue and 2 for a sorcery speed. Look at the top 5, put 2 of them into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. God, can you imagine the playability if this card said put them in the graveyard instead? Ooh, baby, Stock Up is getting played all over the place. It's getting played in that standard Delirium deck that we talked about that runs Vivi and Agatha's Soul Cauldron. It's got 4 stock ups. You're seeing Sleight of Hands in that deck. Vivi loves this card. It's also in the Jeskai Control deck that's running around in standard that features 4 Shiko Paragon of the Way and features 2 Meringue River Regent and Overlord of the Mistmoors. Lots of, Day of Judgment and an Ultima, but it runs 4 stock up because control decks like this typically do. You're running 2 Lightning Helix, 1 Abrade, 3 No More Lies, 2 Scorching Dragonfire. You know what I'm saying? It's running this package of a bunch of different types of answers to the entire meta, and you need to be able to find those. And so having those 4 stock ups in the list is pretty clutch to be able to find what you need at the time that you need it. But y'all, have you seen the Urza Vintage deck? It runs 4 Orcish Bowmasters, 4 Psychic Frog, and then please listen to this deck list. A Black Lotus, a Mox Emerald, a Mox Jet, a Mox Pearl, a Mox Ruby, a Mox Sapphire, and a Vexing Bauble, a Demonic Tutor, a Gataxian Probe, a Time Walk, a Twister, a Treasure Cruise, an Ancestral Recall, a Brainstorm, a Demonic Consultation, a Fatal Push, 3 Force of Negation, 4 Force of Will, 1 Mental Misstep, 3 Spell Pierce, and, you guessed it, 4 stock up. 4 stock up are getting run alongside Black Lotus. 4 Force of Wills, Ancestral Recall, 1 of each Mox. Y'all, this card is crazy. Stock up, I think, has a much higher ceiling just because it is getting played like everywhere. It wants to get played in any deck. The commander applicability is your commander blue? Put it in there. It's probably good. Pay 3, look at 5, get 2 is very strong in many formats, it turns out. I think that this one's got some heights still to reach potentially. I don't know if this one crosses $20 for an uncommon. That would be kind of crazy. But remember, as with all of these, I really feel like a reprint nukes the price, but it's possible. Wizards knew the power level of this one. I could really see this one popping up in a secret layer in like a year or 2. And then just to play devil's advocate to myself with all of my points here, these are still standard sets that are still in print. There will still be more supply into the market. And lastly, a standard uncommon that's at $5, y'all, Boros Charm? Boros Charm is in standard? It is, it turns out. I didn't know that it was, but it was included in the Foundations starter kit, starter collection thing that is also considered standard legal. And so there is a foil Foundations copy of Boros Charm out there in the world that is about $5 and counts as an uncommon standard legal card. I'm including this one because it was so strange. I didn't even know that this was in standard. I went to Scryfall and did my search to see, how many cards around $5 at uncommon or common are there? It can't be that many. And this card popped up and I was like, I messed up something with the search, I guess. There's no way Boros Charm, I don't know that that's standard. That hasn't been standard for a long time. Well, it is. And the last time that could be said is Gate Crash. And Boros Charm is a perennially $5 card. It's been printed a bunch of times. It's got a bunch of different secret layer versions as well. Ghostbusters version, if you want that IP. But just be aware that there is a foil Boros Charm if you want to upgrade your commander decks that's out there right now. Foundations with that star symbol. It's a nice symbol. It's not a bad set symbol. But you can go get a foil Boros Charm for like $5 right now. It's a newer copy, so the price is a little lower. This is the only one on the list I'd be like, hey, maybe go think about grabbing yourself one of these. I think that this could be a good pickup. Boros Charm is seeing a little bit of play. It's a 4 of in the Boros deck that's got Slick Shot, Show Off, and Hired Claw. Runs Bolt Wave and Plasma Bolt. It's just sort of a, all-in aggro red plus a little bit of white kind of deck. That is in standard, but the price of Boros Charm is very typically driven by commander and will probably continue to be. I just think it's notable that there's a foil copy, and right now, if you didn't know, it is standard legal to play Boros Charm in your 60-card deck. Let me know what you think of these and when you think we'll see them again in reprint. Would you buy or would you hold these right now? I'd love to talk to you about it down in the comments. Other than that, if you're still watching at this point, I appreciate it so much. Hit that like button if you're subscribed. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!